All right. Happy Friday, everyone. Happy September 24th. Thanks for being with us. My name is Ashley Jones. I'm the Managing Director of Community Programs here at the Venture Center. And we're continuing our VC Health series this month. This is something that we kicked off back in January of this year, realizing that mental health and entrepreneurship was something that wasn't necessarily being talked about publicly. And so we wanted to create a platform where we could cover different topics as it pertains to entrepreneurs in the health and mental health space. So this month is a heavy topic, and we want to warn you that this conversation is a heavy one, and we have folks on standby if you need to talk to someone. But this one is specific to suicide and suicide prevention and resources. So we're going to get into that in just a little bit. But I did want to kick off and first thank our sponsors, of course, our presenting sponsors, who are the Bridgeway and Chenal Family Therapy. Thanks, of course, to Ken and Bruce for sponsoring this program. And also our corporate sponsors, Frost Accounting Firm, Wright Lindsay Jennings, the Little Rock Regional Chamber, and Simmons Bank for supporting our programs throughout the year. Speaking of those programs, we do have several in the pipeline right now, but some that are coming up we wanted to make you aware of. On October 1st, we've got a woman-run panel that's going to be discussing woman entrepreneurship and mentorship. And so that takes place again on October 1st from noon to 1. Feel free to register for that one. Also, October 6th, we've got a workshop on storytelling for entrepreneurs. This is very important. How do you tell your story about your business and your company and how you got to where you are and your why? So we're going to talk about all of that on October 6th from noon to 1. Then on October 8th, we have a cybersecurity workshop. Cybersecurity is often something that you don't think about until after an attack has happened. So we're going to bring in some resources and some folks to speak about that, and tips and tools and tricks to think about in preparing your small business to be protected online. Again, that's October 8th, same time, noon to 1. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over. I'd like each of you to go ahead and give a brief introduction, and then I'll kick it over to Bruce as he does to start it off. So let's go ahead. I want to introduce Susie Reece first. Susie, will you introduce yourself?
I'm not good at the introductions. I normally just say I'm Susie. I've been in Arkansas pretty much my whole life. I was adopted at about the age of 10, and my grandparents actually adopted me, and I moved to Benton. So that's why I'm here talking about this with all of you. And then I am a public speaker, and I do some consulting as well on program development. So I have been running my own small business since about 2019. And before that, I'd been working in violence prevention, suicide prevention, and substance use prevention through a variety of organizations. And so I've actually known all three of these gentlemen for several years, so pray for them. They probably need it, but I'm very, very grateful to be here and to be included. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks for being with us today, Susie. Chris, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Christopher Epperson. Hopefully it's not going to stick too much. Christopher Epperson. I have a salon in Dallas, Texas. I work there once a month. And then, of course, I work here in Little Rock as well. I'm a volunteer for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I wear several hats in suicide prevention. One of them, of course, being on the Arkansas chapter board for our foundation. And the other is I'm actually on the national board as well. So I have to go to New York on a regular basis for our board meetings. Susie and I both are on a lived experience committee with the Suicide Prevention Resource Center, which is kind of cool. That lived experience is basically those who have had attempts or had suicide ideation in the past or present. So that's one of the things. And then also I've just came into a business that I purchased into. It's for faith leaders in the way of suicide prevention. So we do that across the United States, and now probably I think we're in 4 different countries. So we're really excited to see this kind of movement within the faith community kind of start to build in regards to mental health and suicide prevention.
That is so great, and thanks for you also for being here as well. Whitney, if you're with us, I wanted to see if you'd be able to give a quick introduction. She's warned us that her location may make this difficult. we'll go ahead and move on to Ken. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Ken.
Hey everybody, I'm Ken Clark. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm sitting in the far end of a hotel lobby in Dallas. I'm down here for another event. So I'm Ken Clark. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm a former Wall Street guy. Moved to Arkansas in 2008 and started a single person mental health practice that is now 200 plus staff. We're a 4-time Inc. 5000 fastest growing company in the United States. Broke 8 figures this year for the first time. So I'm a guy who's gone all the way from answering the phones and emptying the trash to myself to being a fireman who constantly puts out fires in a larger organization. So along the way, there's been more than a few times I've been in fetal position on the floor, dry heaving at the fear I've gotten myself in over my head, or that I'm an imposter, or any of that. No doubt that dark thoughts creep into that and have for me in that journey. So I can both speak to this as a clinician as well as somebody who's walked that journey and struggled with the desire just to flee from it all. So happy to be here.
Thanks, Ken. Bruce, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll turn it over to you to start us off with the overview of today's topic.
Well, given the heavy hitters that just went before me, I am the support act. My name is Bruce Trimble. I'm the Director of Business Development for the Bridgeway. Been in this role for a little over a decade and have had the pleasure of working with all 3 of our presenters today. And I'm really excited that we would get such experts around one virtual table.
Fantastic. And with that, we typically start off with Bruce. So if you need a second to get ready, we can do that. But Bruce, I want you to talk about, give an overview of today's topic, sharing those statistics and resources and things that you can contribute to.
Okay, I'm going to just start sharing my screen here. So first of all, I just want to make everyone aware. Well, is that working?
Yes, we see your second slide. We don't see your first one.
Okay. So I just want to make everyone aware that Whitney Miller is available from 12 to 1:30 today to assist those who may be affected by these topics. As Ashley said, these are some heavy topics, perhaps the heaviest we've discussed this year. You can call or text her at 501-350-6578. There's no charge for the initial consultation. After hours, you can contact Chenal Family Therapy, the Bridgeway, or another provider. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about what Arkansas-based entrepreneurs need to know about suicide, what places Arkansans at risk, what our entrepreneurs can do to end suicide, and then I'll hand it over to Ken. Well, in 2015, I received a wake-up call from the governor of Arkansas when I was asked to serve on the Suicide Prevention Council. And at that time, I learned that suicide was the 11th leading cause of death in our state. And over twice as many people died by suicide annually than from homicide. Today, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death. And to me, that's alarming. As a native Arkansan, it's disheartening to hear these facts. And for me, it was a paradigm shift because I knew I had to do more. So this is what Arkansans need to know about suicides in Arkansas. As I said, it's the 10th leading cause of death. And we are ranked 20th in the nation. So in our state, on average, 1 person dies by suicide every 16 hours. Again, these are not just statistics, facts, and figures. These are real people, family members, friends, neighbors, co-workers. So what places us at risk? There's several factors. The main thing is that we are a rural state. And according to the CDC, areas that are more rural are at greater risk of suicide than others, even urban areas. And because of that, there's feelings of isolation and loneliness. There's increased substance use and abuse. We have limited access to mental health services. There's a presence of and access to guns. There are cultural differences in mental health. And there's the ongoing stigma surrounding the need to ask for help. So what can we do to end suicide? There's many steps. First of all, we need to work to remove the stigma. There should be no shame in reaching out for help for a mental health issue, any more so than having a broken bone addressed. Know the warning signs, be aware, ask more questions, and intervene quickly. Learn how to get help. It's crucial when a person's life is at stake. Access the resources. You should all know about the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is available 24/7. And then the crisis text line, also available 24/7. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to my friend and colleague, Ken Clark.
Hey, everybody. So I'm Ken. I'm going to talk about just quickly how this uniquely applies to entrepreneurs. In general, I want to point out that entrepreneurs, by definition, are risk takers. They live a little more out there on the edge of the emotional curve. They experience highs and lows, hope and despair, probably in spades compared to the average person. That's part of what makes entrepreneurs good at what they do, right? They can see huge potential in things, maybe to the extent where they overestimate how outcomes could go. And their paranoia and their fear and their rumination, some of these things that drive mental health situations as well. It's also what makes them good at what they do, right? They're constantly worried about customer service or the liability of running a company or things like that. So in a lot of ways, they have very overactive brains, imaginations, emotions. And that's part of why they end up doing that instead of pulling the same lever 9 to 5 every day. On top of that, I would say that a lot of entrepreneurs are folks that carry some unique baggage into their adult life and their vocational life. Specifically, not that we all don't, by the way, but specifically a lot of entrepreneurs are folks that might have grown up with a fractured or non-existent support system. They've learned to rely heavily on their own opinion of self. Not uncommon to see that entrepreneurs score higher on narcissistic scales, right? If we empathized with all the haters, we would have never gotten off the ground, right? So they are folks in general who often are proving something through the business. I know I am. There was probably not enough hugs in my childhood, or not enough friends in middle school and things like that. And I wasn't an athletic kid, but I figured out I was pretty good at selling lollipops at recess and making some money doing that. So like all things, we lean into what we're good and where we can provide value and where we get positive feedback loops. So entrepreneurs in general are people that are maybe predisposed to some demons that they're outrunning, some things that they're trying to prove or disprove. And lastly, despite what we are told all the time in our workplaces, that work is not personal, we know it's just the opposite, right? There's a great book out there. It's called An Everyone Culture. It's by a couple of Harvard researchers, but they open up the book by pointing out that that's the biggest lie they think in corporate America, that work is not personal, and we're told to not take it personal. And this is for everybody, not just entrepreneurs, right? When the reality is, that's where we spend half of our waking hours, right? I spend more time at work than I ever will with the woman that I married or the kids that I raised. That's crazy when you stop and think about it, right? 8 hours a day, at least on the job. And I see him for a half an hour in the morning and an hour plus at night. But on top of all that, right, it is what my livelihood is tied to. It's what my education is aimed at. It's what's paying off my student loans. It's maybe where my passion lies. Some of my best friends are at work. Some of my biggest moments of success or failure in life are at work. So work is deeply personal. And that's maybe even more so when you convinced everybody around you that opening a, mobile pet grooming business or a food truck or a marriage and family therapy practice was a good idea, and you've talked your spouse and kids into it, and you've got your finances wrapped around it, right? I tell my folks all the time, I don't get the luxury of quitting if this job becomes too hard. I file bankruptcy, right? That's what happens is my kids don't go to college kind of thing. So entrepreneurs are deeply invested in this. So no surprise that the pressure and stress, the fear, the anxiety, the isolation can be overwhelming at times for entrepreneurs, and specifically when it comes to suicidality. Like I say in the clinical room, there's two main things that intersect a lot on suicidality, which is hopelessness and exhaustion. In general, if people feel like things are going to never change and they're tired of trying, the risk goes up for an incident. And so, of course, for entrepreneurs who have been trying for 2 or 3 years to get their business to work, and they only seem to be digging themselves more in debt, and everybody's looking at them saying, when is this going to get better? They may experience that hopelessness and exhaustion at a large level. So one, I think entrepreneurs are maybe uniquely predisposed towards this. And then I think the isolation of the job, and this is really what I want you to hear today, besides maybe, that you might be normal if you're on this call and it's resonating. But the biggest thing with entrepreneurs is that they don't get asked enough, held accountable, and called BS on their answers about how they're doing, right? There was that, it emerged a few years ago on Facebook, but I love it, right? Ask your strong friends how they're doing. Entrepreneurs are really good at putting off the front that everything is okay, right? That's part of the brand. Even if this thing's maybe going to go out of business tomorrow, I'm going to cross my fingers and pretend like it's okay today, in the hopes that customers won't run away and employees won't run away. And so by definition, we put on the strong face, and it really takes some good friends and some good support around entrepreneurs to hold them accountable on their mental health, like we would with anybody else that we care about, to push through the BS, to not believe the PR that they spin. And so one, if you're an entrepreneur, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you surround yourself with some kind of peer group that is other entrepreneurs. I'm very thankful to be part of a couple of different groups like Vistage, where I go once a month, spend 8 hours a day in a room with the same entrepreneurs every month. And they look at you and say, you're not normal. We're not buying it. This is not the usual you. What's going on? And they won't let you get away with saying nothing, right? So that's super important. It destroys that sense of aloneness. But it's also important for those of you that care for entrepreneurs, love entrepreneurs, live with entrepreneurs, to not believe them. And my biggest single piece of advice, right, is to not ask entrepreneurs yes or no questions, because they're always going to give you the answer that they think you want to hear. You doing fine, Ken? Yep, I'm doing good. Things rough? Yeah, but I'm fine, right? What you need to do, what I strongly advise is the entrepreneurs in your world, learn to ask them comparative questions. Hey, Ken, what's the worst part of being an entrepreneur right now? What's the best part? Where are you struggling the most? Where are you struggling the least? Why do you want to give up? Why do you want to keep going, right? Ask them those questions that illuminate the ends of the spectrums, and that's kind of how you get an entrepreneur to open up and talk. So I'll end with this. We need to continue this conversation. That is, mental health among entrepreneurs is not talked about openly, but it's everywhere. I was at an Inc. Magazine event last night, and I've got my Chenal family therapy badge, that they give you when you check in. And so it's all these entrepreneurs, people that run, there was 3 or 4 people there that run the fastest 100 growing companies in the United States. We were number 1,700 or something. And almost everybody I talked to, when they figured out I'm a therapist, they kind of look around and then they lean in and they say, I just started therapy, or do you know anybody in Dallas? Or when I'd run into the spouses, right? The spouse would be like, can you maybe talk to my husband? Will you give my husband a card or my wife a card? Man, they're so stressed out. Like, it's not worth these events to be this stressed, So we've got to push this as a priority as an industry. If we want better entrepreneurs who succeed more, we have to recognize that the entrepreneur, their brain, their nervous system, their heart, their soul is at the center of the entrepreneurial endeavor. And if we don't care for that, we've got a dull instrument. We've got a dull knife or saw that we're trying to shape and carve a business out of stone with. So with that, I'll zip it. I'm always honored to be here. Y'all, Susie Reece is one of the great Arkansas resources. Chris Epperson is one of the great national resources. Y'all are in the presence of a lot of wisdom today. So I would encourage you, outside of this, as somebody who's worked with both of them professionally, caring for people, these are people that you can contact after today and say, where do I go next, or who do I talk to? Great resources. Thank you for having me on the call. I'll stick around for Q&A later.
Thanks so much, Ken. Always wise words from Ken. And I actually wrote it down. Ask comparative questions. That's so important. And I think not only for entrepreneurs, anyone in your life, right? This kind of takes me back. One of the previous topics we discussed was entrepreneurship and kids, right? So the same could be said. Kids are very good at giving you one line answers, one word answers. So pull a little bit more. So I love that tip, Ken. And now we're going to turn it over to Susie, who was extremely humble in her introduction, but I want to remind the audience that she is founder and CEO of an organization called Speak Fearlessly Always. And everyone has experiences that lead them to where they are. And so, Susie, I want you to talk about your experiences that have led you to create Speak Fearlessly Always, and how you've inspired others to heal and strengthen their mental health resilience. So, Susie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So I officially started my organization in 2019, and so it is based around my own public speaking efforts. But then I do consulting as a program developer for different organizations. So I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of different nonprofits throughout the country on building whatever it is they need built. A lot of times it's training programs specifically. So I'll be honest, and I know that Ken just said that we're not normally honest. I don't like to follow the dishonesty policy. And it's very off-putting to a lot of people, because, you know, when they ask how you're doing, I'll be honest. And then they're like, oh, I didn't really want that answer. Can you take it back now? So, you know, I find sometimes it's not just on our end, but sometimes it's that reception as well. And I have to be honest, in this moment, about 2 years ago, I had a really great loss, and both Bruce and Ken were beyond kind and gracious in that time. And I remember during the middle of my loss, you know, I wasn't thinking about work. I wasn't thinking about anything else. I was really not thinking about anything. Your brain is just mush sometimes. And I remember having to go to the store and find outfits for people that we had lost. And I had asked someone that I recognized, like, can you help me? And she's helping me find these clothes. And then I realized, I don't think she works here. I just assumed, because I'm in the, you know, I haven't been thinking, I haven't been sleeping. And so then I walked up to her, I'm like, do you even work here? And she kind of paused and she's like, yeah. And I was like, well, you're dressed differently than everyone else, and I'm so sorry. And she goes, it's fine. And I realized in that moment that sometimes there's these assumptions around being okay, right? And we have to put it on, but sometimes we can't really cover that. So for me, that need to just share that and be that vulnerable person was really important, because during that time, there were a lot of instances where people assume that everyone's okay and they're carrying things that they're not okay with. And I think that we need to pause in that. And especially in being an entrepreneur, I liked what Ken said about that aloneness. I think that that's very true. I think that a lot of people look at us and think, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this, right? Or they don't understand, or maybe they don't see that vision that you have, and it's confusing because they're doing the 9 to 5, and that's fine for a lot of people. But for those of us who have that desire to make a change or to do something differently than everyone else, it can be confusing. So I think it's important, again, to have the opportunity to connect with one another in whatever spaces you're looking for connection. It doesn't just have to be in the space of an entrepreneur. If you're looking for connection in the realm of mental health, how are you doing that? And who are you connecting with beyond just care, right? Because we need to have people that we can look at and say, I'm a mess. I need help right now, and I don't know what else to do. Can you be there for me? So those genuine relationships are really, really important. But I was curious, as we're sitting here talking about this, I see that there are several people on, and I'm wondering why you guys decided to join. Like, what is the reason that when you saw entrepreneur and mental health and suicide, you thought that's where I need to be? What is the thing that brought you here today? And you guys are welcome to just put that in the chat, and then we can kind of answer that. I'm going to take a second and read these Q&As. I can't read and speak aloud at the same time, two different things, so give me a second. I think Christopher George would be excellent at answering your question because he is actually working in the faith community. So I think that that might be something that he would want to answer. And then Stephen asks if there's a network resource containing contact information. So that might be a venture question as well. But again, I'm curious to those who are on the call. And again, you can use the chat function if you want, why you're here. Because I think for me, one of the things that was interesting, like Ken said, was we don't really have this conversation in these spaces very often. So I'm wondering if maybe that was it, or maybe it's something that personally has impacted you. I know that many of us who are in this realm have been personally impacted. And so I will say that as I started my business, and it's still like a baby business, it's not like a fully grown business yet. I'm still having to like do a lot. And I'm not sleeping a lot, and it's constantly screaming at me. You know, I'm like, just take the bottle. No, so I'm still trying to figure out my own groove and what that looks like. And there's so many things about starting your own business that can be overwhelming, like the financial side of it, and the networking side of it, and the marketing side of it. It looks like, Ken, that you've got someone that's wanting a referral too. So, you know, I think that that's a good thing. If you guys are here to get support, these are definitely great resources for that. I know that we talked briefly about the statistics and what's been going on in the state of Arkansas. And I think part of what I see too is there's just a lack of awareness. And there's a lack of awareness in certain spaces. So I think that what I would like is after you guys attend this, if you get new information or have learned something new, that you would be able to take that back to your own networks and your own people and share. Because I guarantee you there's someone right now that you know that is struggling with mental health and or suicide. And we know that we can help them. We know that we can do something. And that's really why we're all here. So how to help with a friend or family member who might be struggling. And then we have someone that's talking about being a veteran. I'm just gonna let Christopher talk for a second, and then maybe we can just open it up to answering these questions at the end if you guys all feel good with that.
Hey guys, Christopher here. In regards to faith-based initiatives, you know, I think we're kind of running behind the 8 ball with this. I mean, most definitely our faith leaders and even just the smallest communities end up being sometimes the touch point for individuals that are actually having suicide ideation. You know, lack of mental health care, especially as we get more north or down into the Delta of Arkansas, is kind of sparse. Luckily with telemed, right, we're able to do a lot more. So soulshopmovement.org, we have several different programs. Most of them are for faith leaders across the board, whether you're Sunday school teacher, you know, vacation Bible school, pastor, you name it. Just basically giving you really solid tools across the board to be able to help your community, your congregation, how to talk about it on a faith-based level. There are a lot of stories in the Bible, period, about suicide, and we can learn from the text for sure. So you can, like I said, and I can put this probably in the feed here, it's soulshopmovement.org. And in regards to that too, and you know, we're talking about entrepreneurship and everything else, you know, it's taken me a while over the years being, you know, owning my own business, that kind of thing. I caught myself very much like Ken, I think like most of us, finding myself trapped, you know, not having enough time in the day, trying to organize to figure out what the hot topic was that I needed to accomplish that day. But as time has gone on, I've started to learn more about how my body works. And I know that if I don't take that time down, I'm not going to be worth anything, right? This is called self-care. And we all have to practice that in some way, form, or fashion. Whether that is going for a walk or enjoying friendships with a cup of coffee or those kind of things. Things that fill your glass and don't empty it, right? Or fill it too full where it's spilling over and you really don't know what to do with. That would be a great problem. But yeah, paying attention to your mental health is a key component to be successful, period. Knowing how to work with the stress and work with the community that you're building within the business that you have. So just FYI on that. And, you know, also there's another thing, I know Ken mentioned this earlier, is that even with employees looking forward, there's a sense of loss of community that's a part of it too, separating away from the main group, but also loss of hope is probably one of the bigger ones too. So those are two things I would say just for yourself and also for others that you're working with, especially other entrepreneurs or even just staff, being kind of on that tap, because you do lose finances over mental health issues, and catching them early can prove to be very beneficial for your organization.
Thanks so much for that, Christopher. And we do want to open this up to our audience. If there are any additional questions that come through, we want to make sure we answer all of those. Feel free to ask a question to our panelists. So I'm going to do like Susie and pause for a second to read some of these. We've addressed the referral to Chenal.
I see Stevens actually mentioned being a combat veteran and former law enforcement officer.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I have a lot of friends who are veterans and who are recently very dark places, especially because of what's happened in Afghanistan recently. So my father was a military sergeant. He was a first sergeant, and I actually lost him to this as well. At this point in time, most of the individuals that I know who have served know someone that they've lost. So I'm glad that you're here. I appreciate that you understand the importance of it. And I will say that there are a lot of resources that are very helpful for those in both law enforcement and the military community. Blue Help is a really great organization that's specific to law enforcement. And I know that recently the military branches have redesignated suicide as a priority. I think that was in 2019. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to see programming wise, but I am seeing some changes. I'm actually working with a couple different installations on some peer programming that might be really helpful. And I'm seeing that being implemented in law enforcement agencies as well. So that might be something to kind of be aware of. We have one in particular in Arkansas that's working on building an entire wellness program for their officers that includes a peer program component. So, you know, those might be things that can better help you when it comes to the different resources that are out there. Bruce, I think you direct messaged me. Did you mean to only message me? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So he's going to share a couple different resources. And there's another resource called Mission 22. It's a national initiative, and it's for individuals who served in the armed forces who may need help paying for certain types of things that aren't considered traditional. So that's a really great site to get additional, financial support. And essentially you just fill out a brief little application, and then they can connect you with different types of holistic care as well. And I've seen some really great things come out of there.
Also, I've just put up the link for afsp.org. It's going to have a lot of information, just basic statistics, that kind of thing, how to find help. If you've had a loss, it has some great practical information about the healing process. There's some videos, talks about our research, that kind of thing. There's also information about workplace suicide prevention initiatives within AFSP. So great resource. It's like I always say, it's a catch-all. So if you want to find any kind of information, that is a great place to actually start.
And Bruce has just put in the chat another resource for military. We Are the 22, and he gave a link to that source as well. And I also want to mention next month's topic is going to be focused on mental health, entrepreneurship, and veterans. As we know, there are several veterans that take on entrepreneurial roles, either entrepreneurship is sometimes what we call it, either within an organization that they work for, or they start their own business because they do have those leadership skills and can solve those problems that companies see as they arise. So want to make sure that's on everyone's radar for next month. I believe it's November 12th. So mark your calendar for that one. We'll focus specifically on veteran mental health and entrepreneurship. But these resources obviously are extremely helpful right now. Like I said, Bruce has linked some, Susie has mentioned some, Chris has stated some. Let me go back through. They're dropping their contact information also in the chat if you'd like to reach out specifically. And now we're going to look at the Q&A and see if any other things have come through.
I'll go ahead and jump in here. And I'm on my phone, so I don't have a keyboard. So maybe one of you can type these into the chat for me. If you need a referral for therapy at Chenal, the best, fastest way to do that is to email us. We get about 5,000 inbound calls a month. So if you don't want to be stuck in the forever phone tree, that's a great way to do it. So our main scheduling email is literally the word schedule at chenaltherapy.com. Having said that, we also recognize that entrepreneurs, as well as all kinds of folks, have a finite budget. So we've set up an email that is specifically for access to graduate counseling interns. So there's interns all over the state that are super capable. They're in their graduate program. They've got to rack up 500 to 1,000 hours, and they've got to do it for free. So we have approximately 500 hours of outpatient mental health by Zoom to give away every week for free. All you have to do is email the word help at Chenal Therapy, or email to help@chenaltherapy.com. And if it comes in through that email address, they know that it's for free therapy. So you may be already getting therapy, maybe your kid needs therapy and you can't afford it, or you're an entrepreneur and you spent your entire budget on Google AdWords this month. If so, help at Chenal Therapy will get you free help.
Thank you for that. And you guys are fantastic at responding to these questions. We don't have any outstanding questions as of late. So I just want to open it back up to the panelists. Anything that we didn't cover, any topic you want to address or dive deeper into, we've got time for that as well if you want to bring anything up.
Yeah, actually, what I was just thinking, a great way for your business to get involved with any kind of suicide prevention. We actually have a walk. It's called Out of the Darkness Walk. It's going to be, I believe, November the 7th at War Memorial. If you're not here in Central Arkansas, we also have about 6 other walks across the state, Northwest, Northeast, Texarkana, pretty much all over the state. And you can go to afsp.org/Arkansas to learn more about that. Of course, we're always looking for sponsors. So
I'll throw in there too. I think one of the things that has got to overlap with this is the discussion around alcohol and other substances. Entrepreneurship by itself has a high level of let's go out for drinks, let's network, let's do all that. I mean, we're schmoozy people anyway. I've definitely had my seasons of taking the edge off after a 14-hour day with a stiff bourbon. Our depression and anxiety and the tumble towards suicide and all those things exist in our nervous system. Our thoughts, our hopes, our dreams exist in our nervous system. Alcohol, by classification, is a central nervous system suppressant, right? It's a CNS. So if we want better mental health, and I'm not arguing that people don't ever drink, but we have to look at how consumption of alcohol and the other things that we use to soothe ourselves as entrepreneurs can affect this. And we do know that alcohol lowers inhibition. There's a statistically significant, it's not the majority, but statistically significant amount of suicide attempts involve somebody impairing themselves with substance, their decision-making becoming even more clouded, et cetera. So that you may not feel like you are in a dark place, a bad place yet. I would argue that wrestling with those things is a core responsibility of an entrepreneur. It's another way that we keep the instrument sharp and make sure that we achieve the outcomes we want and don't stumble. So again, talk to friends, family, therapist about that if that is a place that you thought, yeah, maybe I need to dial it back. So
that is a good point. And one thing that I think Chris answered this in the chat, but maybe answer it publicly for everyone that's in attendance. So you do notice someone drinking more, or maybe it's a coworker distancing themselves, whatever it is. How do you even initiate that conversation? Friend, family, acquaintance, different perspective.
I have no problem answering that one because I do that a lot. The big thing is that first of all, right, I'm going to kind of tag onto what Ken said. You know, we all carry backpacks in our lives, right? And sometimes the rocks that end up in the backpack are a little heavier and we didn't realize that they're heavier. And as time goes on, we keep putting more rocks in without actually evaluating which rocks need to come out. And it's sooner or later, if you're not paying attention to it, it basically weighs you down so much that you can't walk anymore, right? And it's important for us to evaluate those rocks. And if they're not something that we need to keep, we need to let go so we can keep ourselves healthy. In regards to knowing somebody that actually is having suicide ideation or possibly having some issues, the best thing you can do is be honest with them. Make sure it's not a public display of anything. Just say, hey, I'm worried about you. You know, if they're showing signs of eating too much, not eating enough, drinking too much, you know, maybe their medications are involved, showing up to work late. I can go through a lot of things, but the big thing I can say is trust your gut. You are around people all day long, especially coworkers and employees. You kind of know what's going on, right? When they come in the door, you see it on their face, you see it on their shoulder. Sometimes it's a black cloud that's following them for a week, and asking them right up front, what's going on here? Because I'm seeing this, this, and this, and I want to make sure you're okay. That's the best way, just to be honest and upfront when you ask. Confident and compassionate.
I just want to add that I think it's really important to recognize that a lot of people are struggling right now. And I feel like that's a safe thing to say because the world is kind of on fire. So, you know, I think that over the past year and a half, there's been a lot of confusion, there's been a lot of uncertainty, and we're seeing a lot of anger right now. And rightfully so, when you don't know whether or not your world is ever going to return. So for me, I think being kind, not only to others, but to yourself is really important, showing yourself some grace. You know, I know last year was awful for me personally and professionally. I do public speaking and there were no public. So, you know, I couldn't go into the public and do it. And I had to transition and I had to figure out new things and new ways to like pay the bills and have food. And I managed through, but not everyone is managing in the same way. So when you're out, do a little extra to be nicer to people, because so many of us are not going to willingly tell each other what's really going on, right? And we are struggling, and you may be struggling right now too. I don't want you to feel like you're alone, but I also want you to understand that we can get through it, and you can get through it if you have someone in your corner. And there's probably more people in your corner than you recognize. So be kind to you and to others. It's really important right now.
There's something I was going to say that was so brilliant. I was going to add to that. So I'll shut up until I remember. Oh, that's what it was. You know, it's uniquely scary. Like she was saying, you know, for me, the big running joke right now is my business going to fail because I don't mandate vaccines and half the people quit, or because I do mandate vaccines and the other half quit, right? There's so many things that for business owners, it right now in this environment, it feels like, you know, I always think of Ghostbusters, right? Choose the instrument of your destruction. It was the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. It's like, how do you want to sink your business, Ken? With no mandates or with a mandate? But either way, right? It feels like a loss right now. And I think that there's a lot of owners, entrepreneurs that are in this position of, do I, I can't imagine how Christopher's, doing this. Do I make people wear masks and they get mad at me, or do I make people not wear masks? Do I wear a mask and they think I'm nuts, or, do I put myself at risk? It's just a no-win, right? So I think a lot of entrepreneurs are feeling that kind of trapped, like no matter which way I go on this right now, on any of these things, it's going to turn out bad.
And we don't have any other questions. There were a number of resources in the chat box, so make sure you record those. I'm sure someone from our team will record all that as well. Take advantage of these resources. If you or someone is dealing with something along these lines, feel free to point them in these directions. Be an advocate for that person and show them that you care by pointing them in the direction of these resources. And so with that, we want to thank all of our panelists today: Chris Epperson, Susie Reece, Bruce Trimble, Ken Clark. Thank you so much for being with us today. Such an important topic. And again, all the resources that were shared, we'll continue these again next month when we're talking specific about veterans and mental health. We hope you'll tune in then as well. But until then, we have a number of other programs you can attend. Again, the Woman Run panel, that's October 1st. A workshop on storytelling for entrepreneurship, October 6th, and a cybersecurity workshop for small businesses on October 8th. Have a fantastic Friday. If you're in Central Arkansas or Arkansas, enjoy this beautiful weather, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks, everybody.